We once got 60,000 words into a book and then said, this plot doesn't make sense, and started over from word 1.
Yeah. Yeah.
60,000 words?
Yeah.
60,000
You're
words.
maniac.
The funny thing is that's the same book that is currently on sub, right?
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about? Yeah, so that's the one that's on sub.
It's better now, though.
Yeah, the plot makes sense.
You know
Future
what?
plots make sense.
If I can tell any baby writers listening anything, don't be afraid to rewrite, you know? I think you grow so much every time you write.
Hello, and welcome to So I Wrote a Book, Now What? Where writers chat about writing. My guest today is Erin Rose. One name, two authors, Erin Rose. Their debut novel, Sparring Partners, is coming out next year. It is a delightful sports romance about MMA fighters. I can't wait for it. Our conversation was so inspiring to me. It made me want to find someone to write a book with. It also kind of reaffirmed just my passion for writing. So let's get into it. Hello, Erin and Rose. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
How did you two meet?
We actually have known each other a very long time. So Rose and I met in high school. We had a mutual friend named Jimmy. He was part of my core friend group. And he met Rose through band. And I think he knew that we were both just kind of nerdy and into writing. And he introduced us to each other. We were in a lot of the same fandoms, and we just instantly clicked and became really good friends when we were about, I want to say 15 and 16.
Yeah. It's been a while.
So amazing. So you were writers before you met?
Kind of, because we were so young. So I went through, my fanfic writing phase in middle school, which was way too young. And then I think
I wrote a lot of original stories for myself that I was very private about. I had journals that I would write in, and I took creative writing classes in high school.
Yeah, and I think I did a dragon and a knight when I was in 6th grade. And I typed it up on my mom's typewriter and made my own little cover with a dragon because that's the only thing I could draw with markers. I have no idea what happened to it, but I took it to 6th grade camp. I was very proud of it. But other than that, I didn't have creative writing in my high school, so I didn't really hit creative writing classes until I was in college for my major. So.
What made you decide to write a book together?
So we had both started, we got married, not to each other, and we had kids. We always have to catch that so quick. But we were having kids, and we were being moms, and we were doing all the things, the wives, the sisters, everything. And I personally, I was coming out of having postpartum, it stretched into depression that lasted several years. And I just missed having something that was mine, that I could be proud of, that didn't require me to be something for anybody else. And I remembered how much I loved writing in high school and early college. And I reached out to Erin because, we've been friends for forever and we chatted almost every day. And I was like, I really miss writing our original characters. They were so much fun. I need something for me. I don't know about you. And she was like, yes. And we started, nightly just writing back and forth to each other. And eventually they turned into something.
Yeah. Eventually we realized it wasn't total trash.
Yeah. It definitely needed work, but it was fun.
So how does that work to write a book together? Because I have written a book, but I have never written a book with someone. So do you take turns? Do you have different POVs that one of you takes and the other one takes? Or is it chapter by chapter?
So both. And if you've ever, honestly just played with dolls as a kid with a friend, it is a lot like that. I have my doll and she has her doll and they play together. So that sounds so silly, but we each come up with one of the main characters, and we write in their point of view. So all of our books are dual POV. And then we come up with the story together. So before we start writing, we have a very detailed outline that we work on together. So let's say for our debut novel, Sparring Partners, it starts in Lily's point of view. I wrote Lily, but I knew what Kieran's chapter was going to be about. Mm-hmm. Like, it wasn't like I was just going in blind, like, all right, Rose, take it away.
Right.
I knew it was going to happen, but it's exciting to see how she executed it.
Right. You never know, like, what fun one-liners are going to pop up. And, like, so, like, I always love getting to read your chapters. It's like getting to read a book written just for me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that was so good. And we, like, hype each other up as we're writing it. So, like, it's always just so much fun to write together because you've just got that, like, instant hype man. And they're never, like, and we're good about, like, not, like, crushing each other's souls. Like, you know, like, oh, that was okay. Yeah. But sometimes there are chapters, you know, in the early writing process where they're just okay and we'll fix them up later.
Or cut
them. Yeah.
So giving that feedback, do you wait until like the draft is done before you would be like, so about chapter 5? Or do you, like, how do you approach that? Because I know, like, Stephen King always says, write with the door closed, revise with the door open kind of thing. Like, but you guys got to do it both with the door open to each other, obviously.
Yeah. I think if it's gonna be a big change, we more just make a note of it. Like, I'll leave a comment and say, we really need to come back to this. And then I'll kind of bullet point the issues in a constructive way. You know, I'm not going to be a jerk to my best friend and co-author, but like, hey, this missed the mark on the emotional beats. I think we should go back and XYZ. And I just leave it as a comment, and she can read the comment if she wants, or we can just finish writing the book. Either way, we're not going to edit that chapter until much, much later.
Once you get through your first draft, after you've outlined it, how long does it take you to outline a project usually?
It depends on the project, honestly. And I think too, it depends on how well we know these characters, which sounds really weird. But you know, for Sparring Partners, our first book, we've known those characters since we were teenagers because they were original characters and we kept kind of coming back to them. So we knew those characters like from the bottom of our hearts. So it was really easy, like whatever iteration we wrote them in, to kind of come back to them and put together an outline that kind of made sense. And so like drafting the outline for Sparring Partners was like really easy. It was fun. But like for other projects that we have, like if we're getting into something that's more like paranormal or fantasy, like you really have to sit with some of those ideas and like, wait a minute, but is that going to be the best way I want to do that? Is that like the backstory I want? Is this the magic system I want? And so for ones like that, like they kind of take a little bit longer, especially with coming up with the big like plot twists and stuff, because you don't want to just go with what's easy. You want to go with something that's, you know, going to feel right. And so sometimes it can take, you know, a year depending on the idea.
Yeah, especially if we're doing something that requires a lot of research, like historical, like paranormal, where you're building a magic system. I would say outlining can take us anywhere from 6 months to a year, but we're very in-depth outliners. So then when we go to draft, I would say drafting takes like 2 months
at max.
So there's a trade-off there, I guess you could say.
Yeah. And then once you've outlined it and you've drafted it, do you send it to beta readers? Obviously, you are your own first beta reader, which is great. Yes. But then after that, do you send it to other beta readers? Do you have critique partners?
We have like 5 beta readers. Sometimes we'll try to get new people in the mix that, you know, who aren't tired of our writing yet. And some of them are just tried and true, like, you know, critique partners who we know are not just going to hype us up the whole time. Like, they might hype us up a little bit, but they're really going to get in there and tell us, like, where the plot holes are, where something's not making sense, where motivation, you know, is maybe lacking for a character. But then, you know, so we'll do that for our beta, like a couple tried and true, and then maybe some new beta readers. And then we'll do revisions based off of that. taking or leaving some things depending on what feels right for the story. And then we'll usually kind of go back to maybe a few of the beta readers who had like big points that they pointed out on after the revision and say like, hey, is this something like, does this work more with what you were talking about? Does this fix the issue? And then usually that at that point we do a final kind of read through, checking for proofreading issues, things like that, and then it's off to our agent.
And how did you get your agent as a duo? I mean, obviously, it's hard no matter what kind of like iteration of writing people you are, but I'm just so curious how that works.
Yeah. So I think we were fortunate enough, as far as being a duo goes, that in our genre for romance, it had already been normalized by Christina Lauren. So we just sort of tried to follow in their footsteps as far as how we presented ourselves. When we were querying, I would, put the pitch in the book first, and then in our paragraph about ourselves, say each of our individual names writing as Erin Rose. But we've been querying for maybe 3 months when a PitMad event happened on Twitter, and our agent liked our tweet for what will now be our debut novel. So that's actually how we got our agent, was through a pitch event, which is very, very rare. And we were extremely lucky that she even saw it out of the thousands that were out there. But that's how we met our agent.
That's awesome. So they liked your tweet, and then did you submit a query, or was it like submit your full if I like your tweet kind of thing?
We submitted a query and a partial, and within a week she had asked for the full. And maybe 2 weeks after that, she cold called us. And we happened to
you didn't even know?
Yeah, we were actually hanging out, which is rare, even though we live near each other.
We happened to be hanging out that night, and we told our husbands, we were like, we have to take this call. And we sat on the steps in my garage, huddled around my phone.
Right. And to be fair, our agent, Kathy, she is one of those people that once she finds something she likes, she will like obsessively like continue reading it until she's like decided, oh, enough is enough. I cannot wait any longer. She's a little impulsive, but we love her for it. And that's why it went so quick. A lot of the time when you do a partial and a full, it takes forever. But Kathy just she knew what we were getting ourselves into, and she was intrigued enough to be like, okay, I want them.
That's amazing. So what was your process like of going on sub?
So we had a long road, I would say, to publication. We originally, for this debut novel, the one that she liked the tweet of and is now being published in 2025, we originally went on sub maybe 6 months after signing with her. Like, we did some gentle editing and then put it out there. And, the requests came in, but so did the rejections, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the consistent themes that we were hearing is that our characters were in an odd age range. So we had written it as a new adult book, and the characters were in college. And while we really enjoyed that and identified with that, NA, there's always this debate. Is NA a genre? Is it not? Right? We're not here to debate that.
Right.
We are here to say that once we aged the characters up and got them out of college and starting their professional lives, the book sold. So
interesting. That's fascinating, because now you see a lot of like, I'm looking for NA because Icebreaker, huge, massive bestseller, and that's new adult.
Right, and it took years and years.
I think it's just one of those reasons that you can't write for trends, you just have to write the story that's in your heart, because trends change so quickly, But yeah, for as far as being on sub, you've been through that, so I'm sure you know how grueling it can be.
I haven't. No, I've written many books, but I'm still on my journey, forward. I don't have an agent yet. I have many projects going that I need to revise, and then hopefully query again soon. But I've had a lot of projects that I've queried, but no takers. One of them was actually an NA cozy mystery, and that was the feedback that I got, was like, I don't really know if I can sell this.
Right.
New adult really isn't that hot. It was also set in the 90s. And they were like, that's a weird.
All those crap
So I did all the things.
Yeah, it's tough. It's very quiet on sub. It's very stressful on sub. When we did get this book deal, it came through as an R&R. And so we received the R&R in December.
You are so much better at the dates than me. She remembers
so-
the numbers. I do not.
So our editor, Stacy Boyd, she really loved the story. It really resonated with her. But something we didn't realize, and clearly our agent didn't realize either, is that for that particular publication, their word count cap is 75,000. And our novel was 85,000. And so she came back and said, hey, I love this book. I love the beats. I love the story. You need to cut 10,000 words, but keep the heart. And I was like, ooh,
That's
okay.
steep.
Yeah.
So we hunkered down and rewrote it to be 10,000 words shorter while keeping
Its integrity.
its integrity. Yes, that's a good word.
Yes, thank you.
Sent it
How?
back out in February. How? There was an epilogue we could cut, so that was 2,000 words
Okay.
right there.
And there
There
was
you
a
go.
fluffy chapter that we didn't quite need, right?
Yeah, there's this idea of every chapter should really move the plot forward. We like soft, fluffy, they're in love chapters, but
Same.
so we just shortened it where we could.
Mhm.
It wasn't, with the exception of the epilogue, it wasn't cutting big chunks from any one place. It was tightening little scenes and making those changes where we could. But we did it and got it back out and got the deal signed. So
Yay! Now it's gonna come out next year.
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun. Do you have a cover yet?
No.
not yet. We're thinking soon though, because all of the pre-order links just went live, and I've been told that happened shortly before the cover. So I think it's coming.
I will say I did have a nightmare last night about the cover. So, I didn't even tell you about this. And I don't know, my brain was it was like a digital reveal, and it was like a moving video. I'm like, that makes no sense. Covers are not videos. But, that's where my brain was last night, apparently.
Maybe all the Instagram cover reveals.
Oh my gosh, probably.
Yeah. Did you both always know that you wanted to go the traditional publishing route?
I think once we decided, let's try this. The goal was always, I think, traditional, as a way to kind of prove it to ourselves as well. Hey, in college we took our creative writing courses, and I know you had that experience of you wrote this heartbreaking story. Yeah. Go, please tell that.
Well, before I get to that, to answer your question, I will say we both definitely always wanted to be authors. Career day, middle school, I want to be an author.
8th grade.
And self-publishing wasn't really a thing yet when we were children. It really became popular when we were in college. And that's a really wonderful avenue. There's so many great books, and self-publishing also pushes the lens in ways that traditional publishing can't.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, I do think this is something we've always wanted since we were kids. The story she wants me to tell.
Yes, please do.
So I majored in creative writing, and so we had to do workshops, and that's where you would write this piece and give it out to all of your classmates, and they would basically critique partner it, and then you'd show up for class on your day, and you weren't allowed to speak. You weren't allowed to defend your piece. You just had to listen to everyone else talk about it.
Good or bad.
And my classmates tore it apart. Absolutely to shreds. Not the craft, but the story, which it was a romance, and it was a romance dealing with grief, about a woman who was losing her partner to terminal illness. And yeah, they really ripped it apart. And my professor pulled me into her office immediately afterwards and slammed my paper on her desk, and there was a big A+ on it. And she looked at me and she said, all your classmates proved today was that they've never been in love. You're going to be a romance author. And I was like, and
I love that
I think
so
she
much.
could tell that it upset me.
Right, right. I mean, you had to sit there in silence and just try not to cry,
course.
right?
Oh, I did cry.
Yeah, right.
Oh no, in class?
Yeah.
I mean, silently.
Yeah, just
Yes, of course.
creative writing majors and English majors, that can be brutal. So
Yeah, I was an art major and it
oh,
was the
bless you.
same. Like you had to sit through the critique and you couldn't say anything and you couldn't defend your work. It was
Right.
terrible.
It's hard.
Yeah.
But I've got
Yeah.
really thick skin. So.
Right. It really
Yeah.
did help though, like with becoming authors, because all those rejections, man, even like, from the editors too, you think this is your baby, and then they're like, well, that's not the baby I want. I'm like, okay,
Your baby is
that's my
ugly.
baby. Yes, your baby's ugly. Oh man.
Well, that's so amazing though that she saw that in you and she's right.
Yeah, she's right. So I'm excited. She's still at our local university, so I'm excited. She knows it's being published, so I'm going to take her a signed copy once I have it.
Yay. So when you have your project and you've done your revisions and your beta readers and all of that, how do you know it's done?
It's never really done, but we have to force ourselves to be done. Because there's a certain line of like perfectionism where you're like, no, but I just know that there's like a missing comma somewhere, or did I do that scene right? But I think once you get through, your final feedbacks from your editor, and it goes through all the line edits and the proofreads and all that, the copy edits, you're just like, well, here it goes, better. And there's always still going to be a missing comma, but I think I'm just not going to read it once it comes out. Yeah, I don't think I can, because if I find a comma, I'm gonna be real upset with myself. That's like a comma that's not supposed to be there. Like I'm an English teacher, so like that's part of my job. I will hold it and love it, but I'm not gonna read it again. I don't think. I think I'm gonna be like the actors who like don't go see their movie. I think I'm gonna do that. But you can go ahead. I think you're gonna read it.
That's interesting. Well, I'm definitely gonna read it. I think it's finished. After we've polished it as much as we absolutely can, and given it to our agent, unless she says there's something she wants fixed, I feel like, okay, if there's something else anybody wants changed, an editor will tell me. My thesis in college was actually about the art of letting go of a work and how once it's out in the world, it doesn't belong to you anymore, and that you can view it the same way other consumers would view it, but that it doesn't belong to you. Mm-hmm. And I had experience with that in college because I wrote a 2-act play that my university put on and performed. And the director, my fellow senior who directed it, obviously made directorial changes, made changes to the script, made changes with casting. And I was just like, oh, I didn't see it that way. That's really neat, Like, it's just, I don't know. It happens.
Do you think once it's out in the world, you will read your reviews?
Ooh.
I probably will.
I think, oh man, in theory, I'd love to say that I wouldn't, because I should know better, but I think I'll be too curious. But I do know that, like, there is always this talk of like, reviews are not for the authors. It's a space for the readers. So I really think like it's going to be a challenge, but also I think it's going to be an easy challenge for me to not jump into those spaces. Those spaces are for the readers. It's really important that they feel safe to, express themselves about how they feel about a book. But I definitely will be looking for those 5 stars. I will try my best to ignore the bad ones.
I think I personally am just really separated from it. I'm very aware that art is subjective, and what might be somebody's favorite novel, another person quits in the first chapter. I tend to look at negative feedback through a more like introspective lens, and like, all right, well, was there any merit to that? And I just kind of sit with it rather than internalizing it, and take what I need and move forward and try to strengthen my writing if need be.
And hey, if it's a 1 star because it's feminist, heck yeah, man, I'll take it.
Right?
Very true.
Sometimes I like to read 1-star reviews of books I love just to give myself perspective.
That's true.
My sister and I have very different tastes in books. We're both very avid readers, but we like very different things. Like, she is not a fan of Ruth Ware. I am a huge fan of Ruth Ware. It's just like, people just like what they like. Just gotta let people like what they like.
Yeah.
How do you decide what to work on next?
Well, here's the funny part. So we're actually in between projects right now. And we're kind of in that stasis of, okay, do we work on the sequel for the book that's on sub in case it does get picked up? And if it doesn't, self-pub, we're going to want a quick turnaround anyways. Or do we want to write this other thing that's been on the boilerplate for a while that we're like excited to write, but then we're still not sure if we have it all down yet? And I think I think what it really boils down to is like, what characters or stories are we the most excited to come back to? Because I think that's what keeps us motivated as we're writing is like, oh, we love this idea. We love these characters. Like, this is what's going to motivate me and give me that dopamine that I need so desperately. So at least that's how I think about it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We recently had an experience with writing to a deadline, and it was very brutal. There was very little joy in writing that story. We loved the story, we loved the characters, but it was just so stressful. And I think whatever we write next needs to be like a passion project.
Right. Yeah. Dial it back a little bit. Give us a little room to breathe.
You mentioned that you write different genres too. Is the one that's on sub now a romance, or is it a different genre?
It is a romance. It is a historical paranormal romance.
Oh, fun.
Which, talking about, all the different little bits of genres coming together, it's also a mixed genre, because you don't usually see historical with paranormal, and that gets a little iffy in publishing.
They're out there, but they're apparently
very rare.
Harder to find. Yeah.
Well, that's very exciting. Where do you get your inspiration to write?
Overactive imagination. So, Rose and I, we both came from 2-parent households with siblings, yet also we're both very chronically lonely children. So there's definitely a lot of maladaptive daydreaming that has just, matured and grown with us into overactive imaginations.
And we love romance, so I mean, we might get some inspiration from our husbands.
It's true. But yeah, just picking from life experience and then making it kind of fantastical and such. My girlfriends and I have a joke that Lily, the protagonist in Sparring Partners, is a quarter me, a quarter my friend Leah, and a quarter our friend Shelby, and then a quarter imagination. And both girls have read the book, and we almost make it like a fun little like drinking game of like, oh, I know where that came from. And in fact, there is a drinking game in the story that Lily and Kieran play with their friend group. That is a drinking game that Shelby and I invented in college. So it made its way there into the story.
Oh, that's fun. Will you talk a little bit about what your story's about, Sparring Partners?
I'm also guilty of being long-winded and take forever to get to the point.
That's okay. I love it.
Sparring Partners is a spicy contemporary sports romance featuring a Gen Z content creator and a very curmudgeon-y MMA coach for a local gym in Southside Chicago. Which is actually where Erin is from. But, it's one of those, workplace rivals, enemies to lovers. We've got our hidden traumas that we have to figure out and kind of deal with. And there's found family and all of those good things. Please interject because I'm rambling.
Yeah, it is all of those things. Basically, you have Kieran, who is very set in his ways. He has his life in perfect order, and he likes his life as it is, and he likes his gym as it is. He's sort of the unofficial manager since he's the head coach. And then one day the owner decides that he's going to hire this 24-year-old rising star content creator to come make content for their gym. And Kieran's like, what? Why would you do that? Why would you bring in some girl who doesn't know anything about sports or training or anything like that, which is untrue. She actually is an athlete as well. He doesn't want to get to know her. He feels threatened by her presence, and she enjoys threatening his presence. And so yeah, she kind of strong arms him into being in a video with her, and their natural chemistry makes the video go viral. And the gym owner is like, great, Kieran, I want you to be in all of Lily's videos. And Kieran's like,
great.
Awesome.
Right.
But as he gets to know her, he kind of has to start unpacking his own trauma and assumptions and giving up some of that control and recognizing that maybe it's okay if life's a little messy sometimes. Maybe it's okay if love's a little messy.
It sounds delightful. I can't wait to read it.
Yeah, we're excited for it.
Are there any craft books that you have found a lot of inspiration from? Or like, I know that you took creative writing and you took some classes, but are there any books that you've ever turned to?
So it's funny, like in creative writing, you're always using like the greats as like mentor texts, and you know, you're looking at Faulkner and you're looking at Hemingway and all that stuff. Or at least that's what my creative writing classes did. And then you get into publishing, you know, commercial fiction, and it's very much more like first person or third. Like we write in third person, we can't do first person. We've tried, but we can't. But you know, it's very deep point of view, very like, hey, I'm experiencing everything that the character is experiencing, good or bad. But you know what? If they close their eyes, you cannot see what is going on around them. You're blind. And that was a big thing that we had to learn because we're so used to, like, you know, third person omniscient with a lot of, you know, the creative writing stuff that we did in college. So the show don't tell, and what it really, I never get the title right.
Understanding Show Don't Tell and Really Getting It.
Yes, that's the title. That was one of the big ones that our agent recommended to us to help us understand what deep POV was, even in third person, so that we could experience what was going on with the main character, without getting every single little detail thrown at you, but in a way that's still like, you know, sensory and you feel what's going on.
Another one that really helped with the deep POV was Rivet Your Reader with deep POV. And then I also really enjoy the Emotion Thesaurus and the Emotional Wound Thesaurus and the Romance Trope Thesaurus. They're all just really lovely building blocks when you're plotting, you know?
I agree.
What about fiction books? Are there any fiction books that you've drawn a lot of inspiration from, or that just the writing inspires you?
We definitely have some favorite authors and like books that have really stuck with us. So going old school for a minute, we both grew up on Tamora Pierce, and I do think folks are always surprised at how similar our author voice is. They can't tell who wrote which chapters, and I think that's because both of us kind of mimic Tamora Pierce's voice.
Right, we grew up on the same stories.
But definitely Liana de la Rosa. I was thinking about The Kiss Quotient and The Bride Test. What is her name?
Huang.
Helen Huang. Love her stories.
Yes, she's amazing. I hope she comes back to writing soon because I need her back in my life.
Yeah.
Gosh, I literally am like looking at my books. Like,
I feel bummed. For urban fantasy, Karen Marie Moning?
Yeah, Moaning, I think it is.
Okay.
She wrote the Fever series.
Yeah, I really love that. She has a new book coming out soon.
Yes. There's just a lot. I'm so sorry. I was like, I'm just looking. Erin Langston. Oh my gosh, she's amazing. She's in Self Pub, and she is just like, she's killing it. Like, I wish I were her.
She's doing
sometimes.
historical fiction, and they're just such beautiful stories.
Hold on. Isabel Ibanez? I'm probably saying her name wrong, but she wrote what the River Knows, and it is YA. We don't write YA, or at least we don't plan to anytime soon. But like her fantasy involvement with all of that is beautiful, and the historical research that goes into it is amazing. So, oh gosh, I'm a big fan of a lot of authors. Apparently, like I'm part of book clubs too, so that does not help with the book buying.
Nikki Payne.
Yes, Nikki.
Her retellings are amazing, and we've been kicking around the idea for some retellings, and I feel so almost hindered by like wanting to keep the feeling of the original story, but then I don't know if you've read Pride and Protest. It's so good. I'm like, I wish we could do what Nikki does, because she does it so well with making it modern and fun and sexy, but also it's still
the nod to the original.
Yeah.
Like, I know, like, you love Wuthering Heights. It's like, man, how do we do that?
Yeah, how do you make a modern Wuthering Heights where Heathcliff isn't a...
You could do it. I would read that.
So
I would also need to read it. I was a bad English major.
It kind of is a tough read because the language is very awkward, but it's so good.
I mean, who doesn't love a bronze egg?
Yeah, right. And right now you said you're not working on anything. Are you just taking a break?
I would say taking a bit of a break, yeah. So when we signed our contract in April, it was for a 2-book deal, and we had to turn in the second book by October. So we had 6 months to come up with a second book. We did not have an idea for one and execute that book. And it was very difficult.
Especially, I was in and out of the hospital for over a month, and then like in the hospital for a solid week. So that really killed the writing schedule. So it was like literally every night writing a chapter to get back on track. Don't recommend.
Wow.
I do think we're just taking a moment to breathe and think about what our next step is. I'm also just enjoying having my evenings free for a moment because my 2 boys just finished their fall sports. And I'm like, oh, I'm home. This is so nice.
I can relax.
Have you ever hit a moment in your writing, either one of you or at the same time maybe, where you feel stuck?
Oh, yes.
We once got 60,000 words into a book and then said, this plot doesn't make sense, and started over from word 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. 60,000 words?
Yeah.
60,000
You're
words.
maniacs.
The funny thing is that's the same book that is currently on sub, right?
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about? Yeah. So that's the one that's on sub.
It's better now, though.
Yeah, the plot makes sense.
You know
Future
what?
plots
Don't
make sense.
If I can tell any baby writers listening anything, don't be afraid to rewrite, you know? I think you grow so much every time you write. And sometimes you just need it. You know, like we rewrote Sparring Partners to age up the characters, and then we rewrote it to cut 10,000 words. And we love it, and we're so excited about it. You know, the pacing and the plot and the chemistry, everything is so tight and quick now.
Yeah, and you know the characters better by the time you're done with that first manuscript. So if something's not working, like, absolutely feel free to like throw it into a new situation and see how it goes, because you know what those characters want and what they're struggling with.
You know, don't hang on to maybe a lackluster manuscript just because, well, I put so much work into it.
Mm.
You know, you can't be afraid to start over.
And feel free to keep that old copy too. You know, like
we have all of our copies.
Yeah, we still have every copy. We might have even like your husband bound one copy that just doesn't even exist anymore. But she still has it bound on her bookshelf.
Yeah, he made it into a book for me for my birthday one year.
That's so nice. What a thoughtful gift.
Yeah, that's sweet of him. He likes making crafts.
Did he make it from scratch?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. I thought you meant like he sent it to, you know.
No. He got the thick like cardstock paper and he printed it off, and he would do like batches of 10 where he would sew the pages together. Mm-hmm. And then once he had it sewn, he made, you know, the binding, I guess you could call it. He made a cover off of Canva.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a whole book that he made.
She can literally hold it. It's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah. He's very creative too in a hands-on way.
That's amazing. So from the 60,000 words, did anything stay?
No.
Mm-mm.
Nope.
Nope.
The characters.
Yeah. The characters stayed.
Well,
maybe like a little bit at the beginning, maybe.
No.
Oh, yeah.
Asher, the male MC changed. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He changed.
A whole lot.
His name, his personality, not his background, but his name and his personality, because he was just leaning a little bit too much into dark romance boyfriend for my taste. Mm-hmm. I enjoy reading dark romance. I don't write dark romance, so had to reel him in.
We try to be really mindful too of not putting the toxic book boyfriends out there. We try to emulate, you know, good, healthy love as best as we can, but sometimes it's a little hard and paranormal. You know, secret identities and stuff like that. But for the most part, we try to keep characters from hurting each other in a way that, you know, psychologically hurting each other, physically hurting each other, unless it's consensual.
That's hard to do sometimes. Being a child that grew up with Jared Leto in my so-called life, I have a tendency to write just terrible boyfriends. I really have to reel it in. After my first draft, I'm like, oh, he's
Yeah.
a
Specifically
jerk.
in original character writing days.
You know, he's
Jared-
so handsome though.
He's so
So
pretty.
handsome.
So pretty.
So
Not sure.
toxic.
Yeah. Trying to lean away from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That whole frontal lobe development, it's really helped. Some wonderful things for our writing.
Just a minute, like the moment you said the name, I was like, "Oh, good God!" Like we don't get back to being teenagers again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I know what I wanted to ask about titles. Does one of you think of the title, or do you like brainstorm them together?
We brainstorm together. I do think Rose comes up with more titles than I do.
But mine are usually corny.
Yeah. We have this joke between us. that Rose is the idealist and I'm the architect. So Rose just starts spitfiring ideas. Like, what are the name of those poems where you make up words and fill them in?
Oh, ad-libs.
Yeah, she's writing ad-libs over here, and I'm taking notes to make sense of it.
That's how literally our whole relationship is, honestly. Like, I literally spew out word vomit, and she's like, okay, that one maybe. We'll put that to the side for now. We'll come back to that one. That was terrible. Don't do that again.
So, for our debut novel, our publisher came up with the name Sparring Partners with us. Its title that it had while we were querying it, I'm not going to share that, but it was something that Rose had thrown out several of the keywords in different titles, and then I was like, all right, I like this part, and I like this part, how about this? And she really loved it, so then that was what we queried the project as.
And you came up with the Blood Runner.
I came up with the Blood Runner. That just made sense, though. It's just for our book on submission, he's a bootlegger in the 1920s, but he works for vampires. So it's just a play on rum runners. He's a blood runner. He is the Blood Runner.
Very cool. I always struggle with titles a little bit of like...
You think you figure it out, and then publishing is like, no, we want something different.
Yeah. It's really tricky, and I'm not sure that I could even give advice on titling. It's hard.
It's got to be enough to just spark somebody's attention, at least an agent's attention, because just being aware that like that title is probably going to change. Like I know that a lot of titles follow a trend. Whatever's trendy is what the publisher is probably going to go with, because that's what sells books is a trendy style title. Like think of all the Accord ofs that are still coming out. No shade to them, but
It's
there's
the trend. It's the trend for fantasy right now. And for us, with being in contemporary sports romance, we were told that the title needed to be no more than 2 words, and it had to be really snappy. You know,
pack a punch. Pun intended.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier.
I'm sorry, I had to. It was there.
Goodness. You mentioned earlier icebreaker, and you think about that 2 words, right? Let's see, what are some other good ones? Bromance Book Club. That one's a little bit longer, but it's still fairly short. It's not a long title.
Pucking around.
Pucking
around.
sweet.
Pucking wild.
Right.
Flawless.
I think there's one coming out called Racing Hearts.
Oh, yes. The 2-word punch.
Rounding the bases. Anyway, it's got to be short and sweet, and kind of give an idea of what it's going to be about. One thing that we were sort of surprised by was when our editor said that the title should hint at the tropes, and that wasn't something I'd ever considered.
Right.
Interesting.
Tropes sell.
But, she made the point that sparring partners, you could take it to mean that they're going to be fighting each other, and it isn't enemies to lovers.
And also partners.
Yes, and also partners.
I'm so sorry. I was born like this.
I can't with you.
Sorry.
Do you have an off button?
I think I was actually born to be a dad.
Same. I love the dad jokes. How did you two kind of find your writing voice? You mentioned that your voice is very similar and that people have a hard time kind of telling it apart. Was that true even when you didn't write together, or did that kind of grow the more you wrote together? How did you find that writing voice in your duo?
I definitely think we grew together, but I also think we had a natural chemistry even when we were 16, 17 years old. Again, we had read the same authors, we were interested in writing the same sort of content, if that makes sense.
We were in our dark romance era as teenagers.
Oh my goodness. I don't want to talk about
No, we won't, but I'm throwing that out there.
So yeah, I think it just developed naturally over time. I do think there are subtle differences. I am more likely to white room than Rose is. She can become very descriptive with setting, and sometimes I'll really rely on her, and I might just leave a comment as I'm writing. I'll be going along, and then I'll put in parentheses, Rose, please describe the inn where they're staying.
And I go back in.
But then on the flip side of that, she'll turn to me if something really needs to be really poignant, you know. She'll be like, hey, Erin, can you make me cry?
Yes.
And I'm like, yes.
or like sometimes, like, you always do banter so well. And sometimes I just need like that just instant like chemistry between the characters. Like, and sometimes like we'll do that naturally on our own, but like you just always drive it home, and you just always like throw out those one-liners that are just chef's kiss. And I'm just like, no, please, I need you here.
Well, thank you both so much for joining me and for telling me all about your process. And I'm just fascinated with this working together. Now I want to write a book with somebody.
Oh, we highly recommend
It's a lot of fun.
Yes.
It's a lot of fun. I think it goes faster because, you know, you're excited to read and respond, you know.
It's easy to stay motivated once you start writing together.
Do you have anything else that you'd like to share?
I don't believe so, other than, you know, keep on keeping on, you know. Writing should be a joy. Write what you love.
Our agent like always tells us that, like, write what you love. Like, I don't care if it's what's trending right now. Like, get that out. That's what I want, because it's going to be the thing that you care about the most, and that's where your writing is going to really shine. And when it's something that you really care about and love, but also just like don't give up. Like, querying and writing and publishing takes forever, and it's so easy to get discouraged. Like, there were several times we got discouraged, but it's one of those, like, you really have to lean on your writing community and the connections you make there to kind of get through it and have that support, because like everybody else is having that issue too of struggling through and waiting for that yes. And you just got to keep trying. As long as you love it, keep trying.
So true. Thank you all so much for being here. Now go write.